So we'll get things going. So welcome, Barb.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming up from the Toronto office.
We'll just wait until they're
to
done.
share your experience, right?
Hold on.
Yeah, so thanks for joining us. A lot of interest in the brokerage on the luxury market. We've got a couple of folks that have been starting things, toying with it over the years. Dave, is that a fair statement?
Yes,
It's on the market. I know Barb's had a lot of success in Toronto, so we wanted to bring her up to share some of those insights and create it as a mastermind. So the intent is not to have it a presentation as much as a good discussion. I know, Andre, you've had some good experience. There's certainly some interest in that market. So welcome to share your thoughts and ask questions and all that good stuff. Allison, I know, has been doing a lot of research on the community, right? The KW community. Yeah. Good if you can share some of your insights from that as well. And we'll welcome back Sheila, a special guest. Yeah. And I'll turn it over. Yeah.
Can you go to the first slide, please, just in case it triggers some questions and things like that. But yeah, let's make this a mastermind as opposed to a presentation. Just to give you some background, about 7 years ago, I started a geographical farm in I guess you could call it a luxury neighborhood. I didn't know that at the time. I just knew that I needed to change my price point if I wanted to earn more income. And so that happened 7 years ago, and it just started with a newsletter and me going door to door in a geographical area. So there's tons to talk about. So I don't know where you want to start, but
To be clear, Barb, to be clear, it's luxury marketing in Toronto. That's 50 million and higher. Is that what we're talking about?
No, but that's a good question. So KW is trying to, they are starting a luxury division that people can earn into, but every market center is going to have a different earn-in number. So in Canada, they're still developing what that is. I know you actually had a slide. So like here it was 1.5, Toronto was like 1.980. Muskoka was 1.8. So there's different earn-in areas to be in the luxury division. So it's still getting worked on, and I am on the committee, but we only have one call. So I don't have a lot of information in terms of how well that's going to work. You probably know more than I do about that. So obviously we're here to talk more about strategies, tactics, and things like that to get you the luxury listing.
Just a quick question.
Yeah.
So we don't have to take as many pictures. Will you be sharing your slides?
So full disclosure, I thought I was doing a geographical farming presentation. So I actually have that presentation slide deck.
Full disclosure, that's what I'm here for.
Oh my God, thank God. And then he told me I was here to present luxury. I'm like, what? We don't have a lot going on in Canada right now for material, but there will be tons of support in terms of marketing and masterminds and some really cool things that are going to be developed and presented very soon, actually. Why don't we, should we just go to the geographical like stuff or?
Sure, Barb, can I
Yeah,
ask?
let's do some questions and then,
Just out of curiosity, because you talked about your area in Toronto, can I ask you what area?
Yeah, it's in the beaches area. It's actually in a specific community that was developed about 22 years ago called the Greenwood Racetrack. So that all got knocked down and this new development went in. It's kind of a unique, complex, like not complex, but it's kind of like not cookie cutter homes, but kind of, because everything else in the beach is all old beach character. Every house is different. Whereas this is very similar, and there's 600 homes. And I got annoyed, like I was going down the street, and I'm like, why is that guy signing the line, right? Like, so that's actually how I started. So I live in the area. I don't live in one of those homes. I live in a condo building there. So I was like, I'm gonna own this area one day. That's my goal. And so that's how that started. And it is a unique pocket of homes, but doesn't mean that you can't just take 600 homes in an area and go do the same thing. As Gary Keller always says, start with one street and then own it and then move on to the next. So, and it's taken me 7 years.
Yeah. Hi, how are you?
Hey, Laura,
Good.
you're not on mute.
Am I what? No, I have another listing on the street coming out. I just wanted to pop in and have a look at it, but I didn't want to interrupt your showing. It depends on if they are successful in purchasing another house.
You're not
But just Sunny with a big.
Mortified.
Loving the room already, I love it.
I want to hear something good.
She would be mortified if she knew. That's why I love having the in-person, because you guys aren't all like doing like on your phone. Okay, so forgot where I was. So why don't we just answer a few questions and then I can do the presentation. In terms, go for it. Just open the conversation.
When it comes to marketing luxury listings, do you market internationally? And if so, how do you do it?
So I used to do a couple of things where I would advertise in this company that would push everything. Basically, the marketing would be all in Mandarin, I guess it was.
Mhm.
And I didn't know what it said. I just sent them what my listing was, and then there was my face in the house, and then the stuff. So it went online. To China and Hong Kong, all that sort of thing. But did I get any leads from it? No, but what I did was I used it for social media marketing. I used it with my clients, my database, and said, this is where I advertise your home. So it was a little bit of smoke and mirrors. You guys know that that's part of it too, right? Like, this is what I'm doing to advertise your home, but I didn't ever get any leads from it.
I guess the prerequisite question would be like, out of these buyers pursuing these luxury properties, when you get to the higher price point, do you find it's more international buyers?
No, not at all. It's always local.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that there's a perception that when you're selling luxury that they're gonna come from Dubai or, I don't know, like maybe the odd time you'll get that, but at the end of the day, at least in the area that I sell it in the beaches, somebody, coming from Oakville to the beaches or, and sometimes, you get people from the States moving, but it's not anything like.
What is the price point of the beaches?
So in the area that I sell is between 2 million and 3.5, or 2 million and 4, I would say. It's like, but the average is probably 2.5 million.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you started off with that, then said like, how long did it take for you in that luxury area? Not luxury, but as approved price to start becoming known as like the neighborhood?
No, it's a good question. So I went out with a newsletter. I wrote it myself and I looked at the stats because there's only 600 homes.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of turnover in that area. And a lot of people will tell you, don't go to an area that doesn't have like at least 6% turnover or more. Mine probably had 2%. But at that point I didn't even know what that meant at the time. I just knew I wanted to sell in this area and I was going to go do it. So I wrote my newsletter. I knocked on the door and I said that I live in the area. I want to be of value to you, and I developed this this newsletter, real estate newsletter that talks about the stats and facts of the homes that were sold last quarter. And I'm going to be here every single quarter. Would you like the newsletter? And they'd be like, how old are you? And, but then the offers would be like, yeah, I'd love to know what the house down the street. Then they take it. But I told people I'd be there next quarter to hold myself accountable.
Oh, okay. So you'd be knocking at the door again?
Because I knew, but the first time I was like, I'm never doing this again. Like, this one guy told me not to knock on his door. Like, you're going to go through some of that. But then you have some really friendly conversations. You're like, oh, yeah, like, I'd like to be on a list to know about recent solds. Do you have that? And I'm like, oh, yeah, what's your email? Like, you'd be surprised how many times people want to give you that information. And then it took me 8 months to get my first listing.
Of consistently knocking?
I only did it 3 times, so 3 quarters. It took me 3 quarters, so I guess 9 months. The time that I knocked on that particular lady's door, a house had gone up for sale 3 days before I knocked. And she gave me her email address because she wanted to know what that home sold for. So I emailed her. I said, here's the sold price. She goes, my husband and I want to sell. Can you come over Saturday? And I just about died. So I was like, oh my God, this totally works. And I canceled like this trip to Saskatchewan, like a long trip. I was like, sorry, I'm going to do this. Like, it was all good though, right? So I was like, I'm not missing this for anything. And we signed up the listing, and then a man from across the street had come in at my open house and asked me if I'd come over and evaluate his house, thinking I was the expert in the area, had no clue what I was doing. I'm like, oh, sure, yeah, no problem. I was there like 4:01. And then it just like, it gave me so much motivation and encouragement that I just wanted to learn more and be better so that I had more information the next time I went out. So it took me 9 months to get that first listing. Yeah.
How many touches in that 9 months?
So I do, I think I started doing a postcard once a month. And on the postcard, it would be the same. I think the postcard, I can't remember exactly, but my postcard now is the same on the front, and on the back, it will feature a listing. Or if I don't have a listing, it would feature a business in the area.
And was your goal to develop a database for those 600 homes?
Absolutely.
So what was
And
your call to action?
what was my call to action?
Yeah, to get that.
It was if, I put on the postcard, anyone can tell you where your home is worth. I'd like to tell you what your home could be worth. And then I put a free design evaluation. And then I had my stager, who's a slash designer kind of, sort of. I had her go and say some of the things that you could do to make your home more valuable. And that was a free consultation. So that was my call to action. And believe it or not, that one actually got me more phone calls and emails than a typical postcard, like free home evaluation. So I'm always trying to think, how can I be different than every other agent that is putting their stuff out there? So I do a postcard once a month, just for consistency. On the, like I said, on the back, I do, I never do just golds because nobody cares. Nobody cares what I sold, and nobody cares what it sold for, actually, in terms of like, oh, yay, I sold it for 100%, 102% over asking. I don't do that kind of marketing. I really specifically make it about them and how I can help them. And I try and think about what keeps the seller up at night. Like, if you're a seller, what are you constantly thinking about? It's like, well, how can I get more money for my home? And I try to address those things. They don't even know they're asking, but they're thinking it. So from a luxury standpoint, I'm always thinking, like, what are they thinking about? Like landscaping, like getting their photos done in the summer when they're going to sell in January, like trying to always think one step ahead of what the other agents are doing. Because most agents aren't really thinking about that kind of stuff. They're just thinking like, whatever, like, oh, I'll give you a free home evaluation. So if you can think of ideas ahead of before they even ask you, that it's going to create a ton of value for you. So, yeah.
I think we had a question online. Layla, did I see your hand up? Pardon?
Hello, everybody. Thank
Hi.
you very much, Barbara. I actually wanted to be there, but for some reason at the last moment I wasn't able to. It's a pleasure. So I had some questions in my mind. One of them was actually, I was gonna say, did you consider the turnaround rate? But you already answered that. You said like you didn't even know, and it was very very low. Because I'm a new agent and I'm trying to understand what areas to pick regarding farming. And the other thing is, when it comes to luxury market, do you have, like you said, it was different houses, like in the beaches area. Did you have any problem regarding, let's say, comparable CMAs, all of those things? And how did you overcome those problems?
Okay. The first one was your turnover question. I just, people are going to sell their home. So, it's always going to happen. There's always going to be people selling their home. So I don't really look at that. But you can if you want. And the average, they say, don't go farm something that's less than 5% turnover. And how you do the turnover is you take all the homes in that area that sold in the past 12 months. And then, there's a formula for it. Last 12 months, and then see what the percentage of the turnover is, divided by the number of homes in the area. Okay. So also the other thing I don't worry about, if there's a dominant agent, I don't care. Like, nobody's even challenged me. It's crazy. Like, come in my area, challenge me, but they don't. And so most people, the lesson there is like, most people will not farm. Most agents just will not. They will do their database, they will do their sphere of influence, and then, that's just what most agents will do. So there's a huge opportunity. Regarding comparables, yeah, that is a challenge, and it's a good question. For any house, there's really no direct comparable unless it's exactly the same home, but it's not even going to be the same condition. So there's really you can only use it as a guide So I always just set that expectation with the client that there really is no, direct comparable. And what we're doing is using these past sales and these current comparables that are on the market as a guide. And this is what I think your home should sell for in this range. Never give a price because then you're screwed basically. So you give a range of value of what, based on what these homes have sold in this area and what you've done to your home. Technically speaking, here's a couple of different pricing strategies that we could talk about.
Thank you very much. I had another question. I don't know, I think you actually mentioned, but I am not sure if I understand correctly. When it comes to luxury houses, like the price point of over 2 million, 3 million, should we, where do you find the buyers? Should we be concerned about somebody is not going to be able to purchase?
No, don't be concerned. There's lots of money in this province. Don't worry about it. There's plenty of $4 or $5 million. We had a home that was listed. It was a bungalow in the beach, 2,000 square feet. Yes, it was on an incredible lot. It sold in one day with 2 offers for $4.5 million. So don't worry about, there's buyers out there and they've got lots of money. Yeah, don't worry about that. And I think that we tell ourselves a story and, we think, oh, it's $4 million and who are these people? They'll come out, they'll see it. There's millions of people on MLS that see it every day. Angela, you had a question, I think.
Yes. Hi, Barb. It's nice to see you.
Yeah.
Just 2 questions really quick. So the first question was, how do you kind of get over that imposter syndrome? So I do sell homes in the higher price pocket, but never like a luxury specialist. What did you tell yourself when you first started out, just kind of get past those limiting beliefs?
Yeah, that's a good question. I definitely, the first was when I had to go door knock for the very first time. I was like, well, I was thinking, I'll probably never door knock. I'll just leave it in the mailbox, but they're never going to get to know you that way. And I was like, well, I feel like I'm maybe bothering them. And so anyways, to get over that, I was like, I've got to do this and I've got to find a way. And all I just told myself was, I have real estate information here. I have spent an hour writing this newsletter that has great information, and I am actually a valuable resource to them. So I am here to help you. So that's all I told myself when I went to the door is I'm actually here to help them. I'm not here to bother them. I'm here to help them. And when I saw the no junk mail, I'm like, this is not junk. This is, I spent a lot of time and effort on this. You're getting this. I don't care.
I love that.
No one person's ever called me and said, don't put your junk in my mailbox because, it's not junk. It's good stuff. It's not never cookie cutter. I don't do cookie cutter marketing. I actually write it all myself, even my postcards. And I have a billboard in the beach, and I make sure that what I put out there is something that resonates with who I am and it's authentic.
At the end of the day, they're all human beings, right? And they just want to be treated as such.
Yes, and luxury people are no different than the person that had the bungalow for 50 years. They're just people that just have more money, and that's really it. They're just human beings that, you're going to get jerks at 500 grand or 400 grand, and you're going to get really nice people too. There is no difference of the type of person that there is. I've got one listing that's coming out tomorrow. It's the biggest listing I've ever had and probably the nicest people I've ever met in my life.
Oh, I love that.
People, right? And so, yes, I will say about the whole, do I deserve to be here? And oh my God, I was so nervous at first because the people that used to sell in my area are generational family real estate. The grandpa started the business, then the dad and mom started it, now the kids are doing it. I'm like, everybody knows them. They're going to list with them. But the problem is they don't show up. They don't go to the door. They don't do anything. It's handed to them. And people appreciate and value your hard work. They will see you at the door in minus 20-degree weather. They will see you in the summertime and they're like, man, I got to give her she's working hard for this. And that is one thing I love about farming. And it doesn't matter if it's a $2 million or $4 million or a $500,000 house, they will appreciate it all the same. And you just got to keep doing it because after the 3rd or 4th listing presentation, I was like, okay, I can do this. It's practice. And knowledge and going to these courses and learning just gives you more confidence. And confidence is a learned skill. And when you have that, like when I went into that listing to get the one I'm going to tomorrow, I was like, all right. Okay. I did my presentation, and then at the very end, I'm like, oh, my paperwork just happened to be at the very end. I'm like, oh, ABC always be closing. I run the paperwork. Okay. I guess we should sign today. I'm like, we sure got. I mean, it took practice and years to get to that point to be able to say that. I certainly wouldn't have done that on my first one. But like after a while, you start realizing you know this stuff. We know more than they do. We just think they know more than we do. But
True.
Yeah, and you're just doing the best for them. You're acting in their best interest, and that will come through.
Okay, and then just quickly, the second question, because Gary says to take it one street at a time. If I have a smaller pocket of say 200 to 300 homes, would I target the entire area, do you think, or just start with the one street?
No, I would do 300 homes because it's easy to do.
Okay.
And I have 600 homes, and which isn't a lot, but also low turnover. So it's
Okay.
kind of bizarre. It's just a bizarre sort of farm. So you don't necessarily want to emulate that, but I've just been lucky, I guess. But there's 600 homes, and it takes me, I go from Monday to Friday. I only go for 2 hours at a time because I know my own energy level. Like I don't want to turn off for 4 hours because I just won't be the same person.
Yeah.
At the 4th hour, I already know that. Plus I have to go to the bathroom and all that. So I just do like 2 hours at a time. So it takes me, I have 6 streets or 5 streets or whatever it is, and I'm done by Friday. So I take each day to do that each quarter. So 300 homes is actually really easy, and I think it's better to start small because, I think that's an excellent starting point, and it's easy to market to, and it's not expensive, and yeah.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks, Barb. Good to see you.
Yeah, for sure, anytime.
Barb, you said you were.
I just had a question about how do you navigate the conversation with sort of, you've got a $2 million listing where your commission is at 2.5 is 50K versus 25K. Essentially, the marketing is going to be similar.
Yeah.
Maybe the same.
Yeah. So to Angela's point about the imposter syndrome or whatever you call it, or belief system or whatever's in our head or our mindset. So I used to always think, oh my God, like I'm going to this $2 million listing and I've got the contract filled up for 5%. I'm like, are they going to have like a heart attack that it's $100,000? Like I used to think that way at first. And then what happens is I already have the contract filled out. And so I also pay for staging. Now, if I didn't pay for staging, I would not get a listing in my area. So every area, because I've talked to Oakville agents that have $5 million listings, and they're like, I don't pay for staging. I'm like, well, what's your value? Like my value proposition is I work with my stager, and my job is to get your home ready to look absolutely beautiful. It's a teamwork, situation. Then we do the, fancy photography and all that jazz. And part of that is that I pay for that. So I invest in your home. So if that commission objection comes up, I would say I invest in your home before anything is even sold or anything has even happened. And I say I'm happy to share with you what that costs. Most people don't ask. Most people don't ask that question. But if they say something like, well, will you discount? And I'm like, oh, that's a great question. I'm glad you asked that. That comes up often. But I'm like, I'm like, actually, I do invest in your house, blah, blah, blah. And then I said, if I find my own buyer and we're not in multiple option or competition, then I do something on that end for you. So they seem to be fine with that. Now, not everybody's fine with that, but the majority, what I find though, when you develop yourself in a specific area, which is what the presentation is kind of about branding, is commission objections rarely come up because they want you to be representing them because the value that they see that you've provided. So one thing I do is I do a champagne open house for the neighbors only from 6 till 8 p.m. on the Thursday night before the public open house. So it gets everybody, I do a postcard drop, neighbors only exclusive, okay? So from 6 till 8, I have champagne and, maybe some cheese or something. I don't do crackers anymore because people are pigs and they just drop crackers everywhere. And don't do red wine because, you're always going to get that drunk neighbor that goes upstairs and like, you're sitting there like, oh God, please don't spill white wine on this white carpet or whatever, you don't get it. So I do champagne now and I do cheese. And I now have like a following. They're like, oh, well, we've got to go, to this champagne open house. Barb's having it. It's like, And I tell my clients, I'm gonna have a party in your house to try to sell it, but you're not invited, but I'm gonna invite all your neighbors. And that's really what it is, because I'm showcasing their home, because neighbors have friends that want their family to live in the neighborhood, or their friends or coworkers or whatever, right? So they get to see it first. They think it's fantastic. I get to meet them in a really non-salesy kind of way. Like, I'm not gonna say, so are you working with an agent? It's like, oh yeah, hey, come on, you want a glass of, because that's what I. Really, really quick story. I learned a huge lesson. I was selling a home in the area, and I didn't have time to go to the liquor store, and I just grabbed some Prosecco and just whatever, no one will notice. Oh, well, they did. A man did. He was a French man. He said, this is not a Barb vest that I thought that, and he like was legitimately like disappointed. I was like, oh my God, buddy, it's free. Like, anyways, I learned my lesson that if I'm gonna say champagne open house, I better have the real stuff. Anyway, people are weird. But anyways, the whole point of that story is that you have an opportunity to really sell yourself and showcase what you do at a 6 to 8 open house in your neighborhood. It's huge. It's probably how I got, a lot of future listings, because they got to know me and the staging that I do, because they want to see it, right? So that's why commission objections don't come up, by the way. Most of the time people are just like, oh, where do I sign? That's okay, that sounds good. I agree with your pricing. And then I have a calendar of events, like this is going to happen on Monday. This is going to happen on Tuesday. Okay, let's sign exclusive now. Let me start marketing your home now and start doing the social media stuff. And they're like, oh, okay. And then it doesn't come up because of that, because we have a plan and we go in with a plan.
Speaking of social media, how do you incorporate that into the open house, the farming strategy?
Well, we post everything. Like upcoming listings, and we invite people via social media as well. I do get questions, like mostly on Instagram, not Facebook. I'd say Instagram definitely is. I have a lot of followers that are in the neighborhood, like in the beach, that I actually don't know. But they'll message me on Instagram and say, oh, what times, blah, 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 or how many bedrooms, or, like they'll ask questions. So it's actually Instagram for that purpose, for especially luxury. It's definitely interesting, because then I can say, oh, when are you going to come? And then I invite them to personally come. I'm going to be there at this time. So I'm not saying that I've gotten leads or whatever. It's kind of like a billboard. It's free advertising for you. So I use that, definitely use that. And then on my Instagram stories, I usually plug people that I don't really know, or because I'll post like, oh, I'm at the hockey game. Oh, come on, Leafs, what's going on here? Like, I'll like be myself more so or whatever. So I'm careful what I, but I'm authentic, and you have to do that. You have to be yourself, because at the end of the day, like I have a acquaintance in Oakville that is like mortified that I post stuff like that I'm at the Leafs game having a beer, because he's like, I would never let any of my clients see me having a beer on social media. And I'm like, well, if people see me with a drink, then I probably don't want to work with them. It doesn't matter if I sell a $4 million home or not. I'm going to have a drink. Like, I don't care if you think I drink or not. Like, people will have different perceptions of how they want them to be perceived. But I don't think that you have to change who you are. Like, I'm not hanging from a chandelier. I'm at the Leafs game, right? Like, it's whatever. I'm not.
You need a beer.
Exactly. My point being is, it's about being authentic and living your truth and who you are. And I do a fantastic job for my clients. So it's like, this is who I am. And, I'm just, everybody's different, but I think that's really, really important. I think people really value that honesty and authenticity.
Yeah, and you have to be relatable, right? And
Yes.
that makes you relatable.
Yeah, and like $4 million listing or 2 million or whatever, like they're the same as us.
They still drink beer.
Yeah, exactly.
I did. Just what kind of information do you put on your postcards that you're sending to your farm?
Okay, so on the front, will be like a call to action at some point. I'll always have a call to action. So it's always going to be something like, if you'd like a free design, like a no obligation design evaluation, or, if I'm, for example, the listing I've got coming up tomorrow, the postcard says, you know, you'd like to book a private showing, it has an elevator in the house, I'll put things that are really unique on it that typical beach homes don't have. And then if you'd like a private showing, give me a call. But nothing really, nothing really, what am I trying to say here, like about luxuries per se. But I make sure that the font is really nice and all that. Professional photos every time. Yeah.
What's the marketing cost they usually put in for like staging, photos, media, everything? What or the marketing cost for this new property coming up tomorrow?
Like typically it would be about $10,000 or less.
And where's the biggest portion of that, like staging?
Mm-hmm. Now this particular woman that has this house, man and woman, but she's like a phenomenal decorator, I guess you could say, and I think that's basically her job as that house. I mean, the stager came in and was like, what am I gonna do here? So that actually was probably like a $1,500 staging job. So that actually was like a super low cost listing, and it's like it's the highest listing ever. It's kind of ironic because I've had other like a $1.2 million listing, and I looked at the staging bill and had a heart attack. And I'm like, oh wow, right? So you learn over time. I have a business model for the price of the home and what I'm willing to put into it, type of thing. Because you have to remember the splits and the CRA and all that sort of thing. So when a client asks me for a commission objection, I say, you know, I'd love to share my business model with you, if that's okay with you. And, you know, and I value what I do, and this is what I do to get your home ready to show its best, and I invest in your home. And then, yeah.
What's the price point of that listing coming up tomorrow?
$4 million. 4 million.
4?
Yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah.
It's a gorgeous home. I'll have to see it. That's stunning. I mean, mostly because of the lady and what she did. But yeah. So yeah, let's say a house like that could even be a $15,000 staging job. Like if they had moved out furniture or didn't have nice furniture, we would move it out to a storage locker and bring in the staging, and that would probably be at least a $15,000 staging job.
And what happens when the house doesn't sell in under $10,000?
Oh, you always put a Schedule A, and if for any reason you decide not to sell your home, it will compensate you for the costs, my upfront costs. If for any reason you decide to not sell the home. Yes, Schedule A, make one, write it up yourself, it's real simple. If you decide not to sell this home or take it off the market or for any other reason, that I will be compensated for my costs, keep all receipts. I had one guy in the beginning of my career, I paid, I don't know, $5,000 or something for staging and photography. And after the 6th day, he wanted to fire me because he didn't like the offer he got. It was a very strange situation. He had issues, obviously. I don't even understand what happened, but I was so upset I didn't sleep. Anyways, I woke up the next day and I called the broker of record, and they're like, well, just tell him that he owes you for your costs. So I sent him an email. I said, well, you're sure you can cancel the listing with me, but you're going to pay me $5,000. And he paid me $5,000. You must really know. I was like, he paid it right away, and I was like, okay, well, I'll move it right along. These things happen. They're going to happen, unfortunately.
I think sometimes the sooner they happen, the better off you are, because you can grow thick skin and get on to the next one.
Exactly.
Not to say that they should happen often.
No.
But I mean,
I always say real estate's a lot like dating. Better to find out up front right away. Yeah, you don't want to learn the hard way later. Believe me, there's been many times I have. Yeah.
Right. But at the beginning, I imagine it was really hard to stage like 10,000, 15,000 for pay for staging. So do you have any agreement with your stager, or like do you pay up front?
Have to pay up front.
If like when you were starting, you didn't
I didn't have those kind of listings where I was
okay.
paying 10 up front, yeah. But if you do, I mean, yeah, talk to your stager and ask if you can work something out, but they have to pay for it. So you can always do it. Like every area is different. Like you can, like there's probably agents on here that think I'm nuts that I pay for staging, and they might get their clients to do it. And you could ask them how they talk about that. And then some people split it 50-50, and then some people also get the client to pay for it up front, and then they reimburse them at the end, so they're not stuck in that situation. So there's different ways to do it. I mean, I'm pretty confident that the house is going to sell, or I am not going to put a lot of money into staging a home. Like I'm at that point, I know, like I'm not spending $10,000 at, you know, if the listing is $600,000 overpriced, I'm just not going to do that.
Some realtors also will say, I'm gonna pay the first $1,000 or whatever, and then the homeowner can pay for the rest, no matter what that rest is, right? So if it's not a luxury listing, obviously the cost is not as high, so it's more an investment that you really can't afford to save, right?
Yeah, and I think with a luxury listing, it's just my personal belief that we have to provide some value. Yes, we're negotiating, we're doing the best in terms of getting the highest price, but it's our job, in my opinion, to also show the home in its best light, and I think we own that part. You know, you're making $50,000.
Barb, does that limit the amount of listings you can carry at any given time in that luxury range? If you're gonna, if it's your business model says 10 grand, 15 grand per,
Yeah,
you don't want to get 10 or 20 of them on the go, I guess, in a slow
it's
market.
a really good question. I've never had that problem, but I welcome it. I definitely welcome it with my bank and say, hey, buddy, like, let's get going here on some sort of loan situation. Because if I know they're gonna sell, I'd welcome it. But it's a really good question because that could be a problem. And it's rarely over 10 grand, just so you know. I'd say the average is probably 6 to 8. And if they have beautiful things, it'll be less.
Or what's the average day on market before your listings sell in Toronto?
So the average,
days on market.
oh, it'll be less than 30 days.
Okay.
In a hot market, it was 7.
Right, okay.
Unfortunately, not now.
Right, but still less than 30 days?
Yeah, I'd say, as long as it's not, like, what I'm finding now in the luxury space is that if it's not renovated and beautiful, like there's luxury homes that are dated and carpet and you're like, whoa, those will sit. Those will sit. Those ones took the biggest hit in this high interest rate market for sure. But if it is beautiful, it's gone definitely within 30 days.
And do you have, sorry, second question. Do you ever have clients, because you talked about the really cool ideas about the, neighborhood party,
Yes.
and open houses. So I have clients with 2 listings right now that don't want any of that, right? So that kind of limits.
They don't want open houses?
Nope. And they don't want people coming through unless it's an appointment for.
Yeah, I would probably try again and say, I've talked to a couple of people in my office that are willing to help me. Is it a security issue? Like I just ask questions around it and then I would hire people from the office, pay people $50 or $100 to come and help you because you want that for exposure for yourself, right? Like those are missed lead opportunities. So I would ask questions like, tell me more about that. Like, what are you concerned about? Like, is it their valuables? Is it security? And then address that and say, well, usually, when I have a client that's worried about this, I have 2 other people. I have one person at the front door that signs people in, and then we got someone on the top floor and me on the main floor. That's how I address those because you want those, like maybe not the wine or cheese ups, but you want the Saturday, Sunday.
Right.
If you can.
Yeah.
And you just have to tell them it's in their best interest. Like your job is to expose the home as much as you can to the largest audience. And you're limiting the audience because a lot of people do like walk by or drive by, they see an open house sign, next thing you know, they're buying a house. It's happened many times. So I would definitely readdress that if you can. Yeah, if you can.
What CRM do you use? CRM.
Oh, you have to talk to her about all that.
Manage all of it?
Yes.
What CRM is it?
I'm sorry?
What CRM?
Oh, we use Command.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. It's been a project, but I mean, KWE's system itself has been in project mode for a while now, so we're still working on it. We do use exterior systems as well, such as MailChimp. For every listing that we get, whether it be luxury or not, everything goes out in a mass email. In those mass emails, we try and highlight photos of the property. Don't write these big, long write-ups because no one cares. Everything is about images and videos these days, so Barb will do a specialty reel for every property that we list, even if it's not luxury. Some of the small condos, maybe not, but we try to put the link to that in our emails as well so that people go and visit them. We normally try and get them to go to our website where we will direct them to another link to the custom website for the property.
Oh, can I just mention that about that luxury listing for a custom website? We get a sign made up for the, like a rider, and it'll have the website that they can go to, and it will tell you everything you need to know about, like floor plans, videos, photos, everything. That goes on top of the yard sign. And what else? So we do that. What do I say?
Right, so you do a land page for each of the properties you're selling.
Our photography company is more like a production company, and they do large,
So command.
no, actually, so it's a separate company.
Oh,
So they do everything separately, but when we're using command, our command system is just really for us, it's a database and a management system. The way that, I started working with Barb about 8 years ago, and the way that we foster our relationships is more in person, client to realtor relationships. It's not sending them a lot of, automated emails. Hey, how are you this week? It's nice to, hope you're enjoying the weather. Here's how you update your kitchen. It's very impersonal. So the way that we really foster our relationships is very to person. We send thank you cards, we call them, we text them, we randomly drop by sometimes.
Yeah, no, it's
Drop by. So that's really how we manage our clients. Command is great as a huge database for us. So, if I need to know where Larry and Julia live, I've got the information. I add all of the communications that Barb has had back and forth with them in there as well. So if she says, well, I know I talked to them about some property that sold 3 years ago and they still had interest in knowing how that's going to affect their property, I can't remember what it was. It's in our system. So it's basically just a memory bank for us. And that's how we're utilizing it.
One thing also to address, you had asked a question about how I capture that information, to your point, is that for the farm, I actually am old school. I have a binder, and Ruth actually created sheets of, like, from Geo Warehouse, the address with the person's name. So when I first went out, I would go to the door and I would write little notes if I spoke to somebody. The second time I went out, I started getting a little more confident. I'm like, oh, you're Martin, aren't you? And he'd be like, hey, yeah. How did you know that? I'm like, well, I think I met you at my open house. Or like, you just, all of a sudden it becomes more personal when you have the name and everything. And plus it allows you to sort of cross-reference. Did these people move? Do I have the right name? Next thing you know, you're getting emails. So I take that binder. I don't take it with me anymore. Just because now I know for the most part who's in what house. But I still take notes. I still take notes with a pen if I have a conversation at the door.
And if she has a conversation at the door too, she'll normally email me afterwards being like, Joe and Jill just had a really great conversation with them. Can you add this to command?
So that
way
everything
it
is captured.
Yeah, there's also the ability within command to send your emails from command so that there is a history of your conversations that get put into the notes section of contact card. We don't use that personally just because we have so many of them, but.
Okay.
thank you.
I'm not the, she's the expert on that. It's like, so what should we do?
Kayla, your last name.
Oh, sorry. Oh, Layla, go for it.
So let's say if I want to target a farm, but it is far from where I live right now. Let's say you are in Beaches and you wanna target Oakville. Is that make sense, or should we always pick the area that you already live in?
That's a really bad idea, and I'll tell you why. Because you won't go there. You won't go. I tried it, and I know for personal experience. When I first started, I thought I am going to go target this particular area that's 25 minutes away from where I live, because I thought, well, no one will know me. And if I screw up, oh well, and because I was too terrified to go in my own neighborhood. And I just went out there banging on doors and having a great old time. Didn't get any listing, didn't really care. There was kind of like no vested interest. And then I would be like, oh, I'm not driving out there. It's 25 minutes. I can't tell you how many times I was like, oh, I'm not going to go out there. It'll take so long. Oh, the traffic. Whereas now, like in my farm, I'd be like, okay, I'm supposed to go deliver my newsletter today. I'm like, well, I don't really have an excuse. Oh, it's the only time I don't door knock is in the rain, because I can't hold an umbrella and hold my newsletters. It's the only time I don't. But it's minus 20 on there, or it's plus 40 on there. You won't go if it's too far. You just won't.
So good for practice.
It's good for practice.
Do you do your street?
What's that?
Do you do your street as well as farming?
Sure do. Yeah, there's probably 6 or 7 agents that live in my farm. So it was really embarrassing the first time, because they show up and they're like, they open the door with a coffee and pajamas, and I'd be like, oh, hey, Jack, how you doing? And he's like, oh, what are you doing? And I'm like, I'm just door knocking. What are you doing? And he's like, oh, well, just watching CP24. I mean, it's gonna happen, right? So then I mark, okay, agent, do not knock, right? I've had a lady tell me not to bother knocking in this neighborhood because there's 6 realtors that live here. We don't need another one. And then I was like, oh, I'm gonna show her. Like, I just let that negativity fuel me, actually. It actually fuels me. I'm like, oh, I can't wait till my son goes in the lawn. Like, I actually use that as a motivation because who is she to tell me not to, you know, like, I'm here trying to make a living. That's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to be of value and make a living.
Do you do closing gifts?
I do.
And so for luxury listings, what does that look like?
Yeah, that's a good question. Now I've spent a lot of money and I've spent little money and it doesn't really matter. I've found people just appreciate the thought. And, you know, and there's lots of realtors that don't do closing gifts thinking, you know, like their services their gift. I usually like to just send a bottle of champagne, or I might say something, you know, like in my farm, like, what's your favorite restaurant? Do like a gift card, maybe a $250 gift card to their favorite restaurant. But it's really just a thought that I like to do it. Usually it's a nice bottle of champagne. I've done leaf tickets before. That can go either way. But like,
You're ready for the next game?
I'm not going anymore. I'm done. Like, I actually got invited to the, well, I don't even want to get into it. I'm not going.
I had to start locking
I
my
think I'm
car
bad
and putting the
luck.
windows up because they were stuffing the tickets in the car.
I think I'm bad luck. No, I'm not going. Yeah, so for gifts, I mean, it's really up to you. You know, I have spent more money on luxury listings, but actually it doesn't matter if it's a $500 gift card or a $200. I don't think it actually matters. Yeah. Just also for farming, if you're thinking about farming and starting out to farm, I think what's really important to Layla's question as well is who lives in that farm? What are the demographics of that farm, and who do you want to be to them? Like, can you relate to them? Are they, you know, are they executives? Are they, you know, people that have lived there for 50 years in a bungalow that, you know, they're all seniors and they're going to go out in a pine box, you know, like you hear that all the time. Who are they in your farm, and who do you want to be to them? And can, you know, seriously, you have to think about, like, do you relate to them, and can you relate to them? Because I think that's really important. You know, I think it's important to know who they are. The second part of it is winning a luxury listing is understanding the I think it's called psychographics, which is just a fancy way of understanding the lifestyle of the people that want to move into the neighborhood. And it's important for you to tell your sellers when you're in a luxury listing appointment that, you know, you understand the buyer demographic coming into this neighborhood. They love kiteboarding down at the beach. This is just happened actually with a buyer, because they came in and told me exactly what they like to do. They like to be able to walk their paddleboard down to the lake. You know, they want to take their dog to Woodbine Park. So all these little things are the reasons why they want to live in that area. And when you can tell a seller that you understand the buyer demographics coming into the neighborhood and the reason why and how you want to market to them, like, you're way ahead of the competition at that point. Because you're not just giving a price range. You're not just saying, oh yeah, it's worth this much. Okay, yeah, we're going to do some like fancy reels and stuff. It's going to be great. You can talk about the buyer demographics at a really deep level. It's huge.
I'm just gonna add something to that really quickly. So Geo Warehouse actually has this new report that you can download. I actually just checked for this address. It is available in Barrie Simcoe area. So it's called the Prism Group, and it'll actually give you what type of demographic is in the area. So for instance, this part of Barrie is stressed in suburbia, and it'll give you a whole report on what kind of person is looking to move into this area. So that might be helpful for you. I'm not sure, but.
So just incorporating stuff like that into a listing presentation is also very valuable. Just being able to talk about that.
So this lifestyle staging goes well with understanding the demographic, because you can.
Exactly. We always try to incorporate like beachy things into the stage. That's a really good point. What else we got? What else we got? Layla's got another question. What do you got?
So I don't know if I missed in the beginning if you mentioned like how often you go. Do you door? I think you door knock every quarter, and then every month it's postcard. Anything else?
Yeah, I door knock every quarter with my newsletter that I write. A postcard goes out every month. if I have a listing and I'm inviting people to a champagne open house, a postcard goes out just to that specific area. So I do 600 postcards for that. And then, yeah, so whenever I have a listing, they're gonna get information. And then I just do like, now it's taken me probably 3 years of consistently doing that. And I don't probably door knock every quarter now, like with COVID, that was weird. I didn't go around because I thought that was not the right thing to do, but I still do what I call, oh yeah, my love letters, they're my favorite. So I write a letter to them. So I do a newsletter, but then every once in a while I'll get motivated to write a letter. And then in that letter will be something like, hey, I just want to let you know, this is what's going on in the market. Inflation seems to be going down, trying to get the right direction. Bank of Canada, blah, 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 a little bit of that. Just kind of like take some stuff, go on the internet, whatever. And then I just make it like, at first it's personal. It's about the weather. We're entering the summer, hopefully, or spring or whatever. And then I'm like, I just want to let you know that we're working, with a family that is looking for X. And usually that really is the case. Like they're looking for a 4-bedroom home. Because usually I'll have people in my database just kind of circling, maybe not buying now, but they're buying in the future. And I just wanted to let them know this is what's going on. I want to let them know I'm active with buyers, because a lot of times I'll get a phone call, and I just recently got one from a lady, unfortunately, sadly, lost her husband, and she wants to sell her home, but she doesn't want it to go on MLS, and she doesn't want people traipsing through her house, and asked if I can sell it exclusively through a buyer I may have. Absolutely, we can do that. So, now I'm of value to her because of, the buyer database, right? So, and I care so much about, I would love nothing more than to do that for her. And then we'll do marketing around that to try to find her a buyer. And also cooperate with other agents as well. It's not just me finding a buyer. I'll let other agents know in my network, hey, do you have a buyer for this home? We don't want to go on MLS. Here's the price. You still get your 2.5%.
Are you using neighborhood mail like Canada Post?
For the love letter, I do. It's very
But not
expensive
for the
now.
postcard?
Oh, for the postcard, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and what is your rate to the Toronto Real Estate Board?
How much does it cost me? Okay, so I don't just postcard my farm. So I postcard about 5,000 homes in the beach, but it does go to my farm and then it goes to other areas. I think that costs me $1,700 a month.
For how many?
Maybe it's 7,000.
Yeah, that's what I always heard Toronto got a much higher discount than others.
So I also have a gentleman that does my postcard for me, and I do change it every month, so that's probably costing me. But I don't want to just do
So
it.
he takes care of them.
He does everything. He does like the design and the graphics and everything. And I was actually thinking about the other night when I did transfer 1,700. I'm like, I wonder if I'm like getting a good rate here, because like I've been paying him that for like a long time, and I've never really, because it's really hard to find somebody that will take it away from me. I don't want that. I don't want that job. And so for me, it's worth it.
Right, so I'm assuming as a byproduct of your farming, you would have like multiple listings in the same neighborhood at the same time, correct? Like,
Not always because of the price point, right?
okay. Well, my question is like, how would you handle the objection in the listing equipment that like, I don't want somebody representing me that's representing the other houses in the neighborhood?
Okay, so that's a really good question, and this actually happened at the beginning of the year. So because I'm the listing agent for both properties, I would say, you know what, you do not want another agent. Like I just strike the fear of God into people, basically. Like if the worst thing that can happen is another agent come in here, list the home. Well, I've got this listed. It's terrible because there's only 600 homes in this area, and we do not want to compete with each other because there's not a ton of buyers for the area that I sell in. It's kind of cookie cutter, and most buyers typically go buy the older beach character homes. And so because I know that there's not a ton of buyers for these homes, you never want to have two at the same time. So I always say, oh, it's a huge benefit, because what I'll do is I'll stagger them if you can.
I love your objection, but do you have 100% absorption for your area?
I do not, but probably 8 out of 10 homes are.
Really?
Yeah.
That's amazing.
But it's 7. No, but it's taken 7 years or so.
That's
And
amazing.
also, but it's also, I'm sure I annoy people too. They're like, oh, I'd be at a coffee shop and people are like, oh, I saw you, blah, blah. And I'm like, oh God. Like because I'm a little like cringed out by it, because like my signs, my postcards, like I'm kind of everywhere in a very, very small area. So again, it's such a unique kind of pocket that it's unusual to have that kind of, but it wasn't like that for the first 5 years. It would probably be like out of, 9 listings, I might have 3 or 4. Whereas, in the last couple of years, it's just been different. And I think that when you have the pandemic and you have high interest rates, I think one of the benefits of having a geographical farm is that people don't list with their nephew. They want the professional. I think it's huge, like, because they're like, well, I can't risk, this is my largest financial asset. Like, I need to go to the person that has a proven track record in this area. I want to do my neighbor or my nephew a favor, or my uncle or whoever. Everybody's an agent these days, right? But I think in having that farm is huge. It is a massive benefit to you as a realtor, even if it's to Angela's like 300 homes. Start a farm because it is a sustainable long-term strategy. People now phone me. I still like freak out. I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe they called me to come over for an appointment. Like, I still get super excited about it because I like can't believe that this actually, really worked. And it took a couple of years of, consistency is the key here. Consistency and genuinely caring about them. The other thing I just want to say too is like different ideas. So I did a flyer. So I'd be like, oh, I don't have a listing, and they've already got my newsletter, what can I do? So we did a donation clothing pickup during the pandemic when there was nowhere to drop clothes off. Do you remember that? I don't know if you guys had that problem, but they blocked all the bins. So we did a clothing pickup because people were like had nothing to do and like were ecstatic. I can't believe how much stuff we picked up because Jamie Lee had arranged for someone for us to drop off for people in need. So we did that. I did a flyer called the Snow Angels, and like if you're unable to shovel the snow off your walk, just call Team Best. And then I recruited my husband and said, "You gotta go shovel this little old lady's walk," and she called us. But we went and did that. Most people don't call, but you get a few calls. Oh, we can shovel? Sure, we will, right? We're out there shoveling. But then all of a sudden the neighbors see you doing that. It's huge. I went and did a walk myself, and people are like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "Oh, they're just away. They're in Florida. They asked me to shovel their walk." You will get listings just for doing something like that. The other thing was the clothing. Oh my God, yes, how could I forget? The best was I hired an ice cream truck this past summer. And we're not allowed to park it on the street in this area. So I called one of the neighbors that owns the biggest house there, and she said, "Yeah, you can park it in my driveway." I said, "Oh my God, thank you, sweetie. We got that." We delivered flyers, postcards, and we just said, bring the coupon out for a few free ice cream. And oh my God, we had, I think it was like 150 people come out, and we ended up like, there was just a ton of people. And Ruth and I stood by the ice cream truck and just had conversations. We took photos, put them on social media. And most people were just like so appreciative of like a free ice cream cup. It's insane. Like, definitely going to do that one again. So sometimes people do events at schools, and you got to do what's authentic to you. For me, ice cream, it was 2 hours. I was in and out. Boom, I was home by 7. It was perfect. It was awesome. Huge value for the neighborhood. Yeah. I think just thinking outside the box too, from what other realtors are doing is huge. Yeah. What else?
What's your daily schedule like?
Oh, that's a terrible question. I'm just doing the best I can to get out of bed.
I guess the follow up, what you remember in the beginning, what kind of what motivated you to get out and door knock? Because obviously it's door knock cold calling. It's mentally tough, especially if you're doing it by yourself. What was like the driving factor?
Yeah, no, it's good, and it's probably more of a personal question. So it's kind of like having your big why and what kind of drives you. I think I've been in sales since I was like, I don't know, probably 6, right? Like we're all like, whatever, you know what I mean? Like we were sort of meant for certain things. I went to university, but all I ever wanted to do was just sell. I'm like, said to my parents, "Why do I have to go to university? You have to get a business degree or something." So I went and did that, but I just wanted to sell something. And anyways, I think that I just love that part of it. Like I've always loved that part of it. I've always just woken up and just, okay, I just want to go be productive. There's the personal side of the why that we don't need to get into, but and everyone has to have that sort of like, what is going to make me go out and do this? So the other side of it, like the fun side of this, to me, I look at this as a game. I think it's hysterical that like little wolfies out there getting these listings from all these people that had this generational, like they don't have any clue what it is. I think they think I'm probably handing out gold or something. Like they have no idea. But I'm literally just out there doing it and they're not. And that's really the difference. I'm not doing anything special other than showing up at somebody's door to try to be of value. That is it. If I really just, you know, put it down to the basics, I am just out there and other people aren't. And it's hard to be consistent. That is the hard part because there's many times that it was really cold. And those times that I did go out there, I'd have people say, oh, you poor thing, like, do you want to come in for some hot chocolate? And I'd be like, yeah, okay. My face was actually frozen. It was like, this was stupid. I had to go home. But I will say that the other thing is I brought somebody with me when I went door knocking when I first started. So I was terrified. I wasn't terrified that someone was going to take me to the basement. I was terrified someone was going to yell at me and tell me, like, don't ever knock on my door again. So recruit someone to go with you. I recruited my mortgage broker at the time. Okay. I've had people tell me they brought their like landscaper friend. I had somebody tell me they brought another agent and they would go to their farm in the morning and they go to, or the next day, and they'd go and help them and just be with them. So I brought my mortgage broker and I told her, hey, you come with me and any leads I get or any like buyer leads, I'll make sure that they do the mortgage with you. So she loved that, right? She got a few leads. Sometimes I'd give her a referral, like give her $1,500 because she was with me and I got that listing. Like just treating people really, really well that, you know, that you want to come with you. Because I was terrified. Now I could go and do it, no problem. But like in the first couple of years, I was like, oh, because I did have one man say like, you know, some nasty things like, oh, can't you see it says no soliciting? And I'm like, well, I'm not a lawyer.
It's a great point though, Barb, especially in today's world. You do let someone know when you're going out and you're doing your door knock? Like, do you let the office know or do you let someone?
No, I'm not really. I'm never worried about that. No. But if I was going to a neighborhood I didn't know, because, you know, I did practice a lot of door knocking in other places, but I never once went alone. But I was always with a woman usually. And this one man did invite us to come into his house to see. He goes, well, why don't we go down and look at the basement? I'm like, I'm not going down. I don't need to see your basement. I believe you're shooting for. I believe no, like, but yeah, like I probably wouldn't. I don't really think about that, but yeah, it's probably a really important thing to think about. Anyway, I would be more concerned. I don't do open houses alone. I've had way more weird things happen in open houses than door knocking. I've had some very strange things happen. I actually don't do open house alone anymore. Not just for that reason, but also I don't like being alone in an open house. It's boring. I like it when somebody's there. If I have to pay somebody from my office, like if someone from my team can't do it, I'll pay someone $100 to come and sit at the open house. Because then I can get someone to check people in and I can have those conversations. It's really hard to manage a really good open house. You know, when you're the only one there, it's amazing what you can accomplish when someone's there to take away that. Also, it makes you feel more confident. You can ask more questions. Yeah. There's weird people out there. Be careful. Oh, anything else?
So I have a question. I know through KW Luxury Online, through the luxury kind of community, they have I think it's kind of a bit of a canned listing presentation of sorts where it's like that iPad, like a tablet with the black binder, and you can order them and it kind of does this like very fancy looking presentation for your luxury listings. Do you use that tool or have you created kind of your own system so you don't?
So that KW Luxury is all new to me, and I've actually been asked to be on the committee. So I was on one phone call, and then I just listened to a recording of a call. So all that stuff is coming out. I don't know that it's available just quite yet in Canada. It might be. I
think you can order those.
Yeah, and then they're still figuring out the opt-in, earn-in, and you have to sell a certain number. So I think all this is going to be here very soon, and I know that there's like a class or a course you can take on May 31st, I think it is. Okay. So yeah, I'm still trying to figure out what's going on with that, and I will have more information as well. But I would totally get something like that for sure.
I was curious if you had created your own or if you were using those tools.
Yeah, and it's interesting because somebody new asked me if I'd share my listing presentation with them. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm kind of embarrassed, but it's kind of like all in my head now. It's sad, but like, I actually don't have a presentation per se. I will go though with intention and purpose. Like I'm not leaving without the listing, and I always go with paperwork. But for me, it's really, it's the knowledge around what is currently our competition. And then trying to drill down on, what is the best guide in terms of past sold. And I really drill down. I look at the listing when it was last sold. I look at everything I could possibly think of to assess where this house should land. And what then is the best strategy to get to that number. And I usually just give 2 strategies for that. And I always just say like, hey, we're a team, and the other thing I've started doing is I'm like, okay, so everything's in writing here about what I think your home is worth. What do you think? And then what do you want, right? Because it could be 2 different numbers. And they're like, well, people will always say, well, that's your job to tell me. And I'm like, yes, I know, but it's all in writing here, and I'm going to show you in a minute, but I want you to tell me. And then they'll usually tell me, which is awesome because I'm very forceful about that. Yeah,
100% of the time.
Perfect. You got to ask them that because you want to know what they're thinking, right? Because if they're way out to lunch, then you've got a big challenge, and then at least okay, now I know how to direct this pricing strategy conversation. Always try to get them that before you present the pricing strategy, because then you know where their brain's at. Yeah.
And before, your brain's doing that to go any further, right?
That's what happened at this last listing. I'm like, wow, you're really gonna love me. And then they signed. That's awesome. That's it. Thank you guys. That was really fun. I hope that was, helpful. Is there any other questions that we're doing?
I just have just the KW luxury piece. I guess is more about farming, but I don't understand. I know nothing about it. So can you explain what it actually is?
So do you want to take this one, David? What I know about it is right now they're creating a division to compete against like Sotheby's, for example. And that KW luxury is, going to be competing against these, the consumer has a perception that, Sotheby's or what's the other one, Angles. Yeah, like they're apparently huge now and buying up all these offices in different areas. They're like this incoming threat. So KW wants to create this luxury division to get that perception out there. And so for an agent to be a luxury agent, there's a price point that you have to typically sell in. So for Barry, I think it was 1.5 million. And then they're going to have you have to sell a minimum of 4 or something like that. So then once you become that, then you can go and you have access to all these luxury materials like the listing.
Yes, sorry.
Please help me out here.
Because actually we have a listing currently that falls into that luxury threshold. And so there's two options for, using that luxury community. One, because the listing qualifies as a luxury listing, you have access to all of the luxury branding. It gets syndicated to Wall Street Journal.
See, I don't know all this. I'm brand new in the
it
thing.
Syndicates to all of any, as long as you hit that threshold and you put it on KWLS, it will automatically, with that price point, portal you over and you can use all their tools. So that's one way to get into it. Or you buy in. So not buy in, but earn in, which I think you have to do. So many transactions at your certain threshold within 24 months, or something like that.
Yeah, and if you double ended, it counts as 2.
But if you're going to a listing appointment and you know it's going to be over that price point, as an agent, even if you haven't earned into that program, you can boast all of those tools.
Yeah, so we just have to roll this program out so everybody knows about it.
And it's working. We're syndicated on, I think there's about half a dozen websites, Mansions International, and all these ones that it's pumping our listing out.
See, this is amazing.
But it's not new. 6 or 7 years ago.
As long as it goes over, so there is some criteria.
Well, this is KW luxury.
And it's resident.
That's what it was called.
What I'm curious actually, because I've been following KWS as well, and I think they have that for a while already, right?
Yeah, they're just trying to roll it out in Canada to be like something that
And what I find interesting because, for example, we go to Vegas or something, their luxury market is like cheaper than our normal market. So like you can go to luxury market there for 500
Yeah.
grand.
It's different in every market center,
Yeah.
depending on the average.
So actually, and it's interesting because what I feel we changed from us by what I'm saying is like just the way they market the property. Because it's actually like any house here in Barry would be luxury market for that. It's like anything here is above 500 grand. And
Oh, it's 1.5 million here, that's what the.
yeah, and then there you see back at like the KW luxury is like
I know, it's
150.
different for every market center.
And I just feel very interested the way they marketing it out. Like, so we're bringing this to Canada now.
Yes,
Okay.
yeah, and it'll be rolled out soon, so, yeah. Consistency, authenticity, and get out and see people, because it'll happen.
Thank you, Barb.
Thank
Another special guest that I wanted to bring in. So I'm sitting in the backyard with my neighbor. And,
Can we go to sure, let me do a circle first. So just so you guys can see her. Go ahead.
so I'm
No touching.
sitting in the back with my neighbor Liz, who's a retired vet, and she's telling me about this great program. And I thought, Liz, you've got to come to a presentation that's happening and talk about
Goat service dogs, yeah. I'm telling you, Kate's backyard is the best place to be. If you haven't been yet, you need to go there. So, thank you for it, maybe complicated things. Yeah. So, my name is Liz. I've been with Coke now for, I guess as long as we lived in Barrie, so 7 years. All 14. One more turn. Yes. Oh, there. Okay, we're good. I've always been involved with service dogs, but where do I need to be?
Right there.
I want you guys to be able to see. Yes. So, I have always been with service dogs. Grew up with a grandmother who's blind, and just ended up being on the cross-country ski team for the blind, and saw what a difference service dogs made. So my husband's a vet as well. We've trained 17 over the years, and now that we're not training anymore, I decided I need to find a space in Barrie that is just as cool as the spaces that we've worked in before. So that brings me to Cope, and my slide presentation is up on there, and I'm just going to speak to it, if that's all right with you guys. Has anybody heard of Cope? Oh my goodness, yes, okay. Yes. So this is, Cope's been around for over 20 years, and this is one of the first groupings that went through. So am I saying to you, next slide, please? Yes. Okay, next slide, please. And I wanted to just give you some idea of some statistics that really kind of are what we are all about. So it costs $30,000 to train one dog in the 2.5 years that it takes to train them from breeding right through to final product. And the number of commands that Lena is currently almost capable of, because she is 2 years of age, is 90 commands. And so as you can imagine, this can sometimes be the link to independence for someone who has some form of neuromuscular disability. But the cool thing about Cope is that it's not just about we train them and then one person gets them.
as you'll see, we've got this very cool journey that these dogs go on. And so over 40 people's lives are enriched per dog that we train. So let's get into it. Next slide, please. This is how it starts. And next slide. So little tiny bundles of joy that are bred specifically to be service dogs. So we belong to, sit. Sit. Yes, down. Good girl, and wait. I have something really delicious in here. So, and she and I just napped. So she's like, how far can I push you? Okay, stop there. So the pups are start their training even before 8 weeks of age. We wean at about 5 weeks of age. And one of our dogs came from this group. And as you can see, this is an incarceration. So these gentlemen were all paired with a puppy and responsible for raising it and training it between 5 weeks and then when we get it at 8 weeks of age. So a whole bunch of lives changed right there. It is absolutely phenomenal. We belong to a breeding cooperative so that we don't get teeny tiny gene pool. And so all across North America, all of the dogs that will come to us are purpose bred for being service dogs. And they all come like this. They're steady eddies right from the get-go. Next slide, please. So because we're in a cooperative, sometimes we send off semen, if you're okay with that. And sometimes we get puppies in the mail or in the air. So when we whelp a litter of 9, we will keep 3 to 4 of them. And the rest will go off to other service dog groups, which means they owe us puppies. And so this is Molly. She came in the mail. And here she is. We are kind of a stopgap. If we don't have a foster home right away, she comes to us. So this is dear Molly. Next slide, please. We start them right away. We have about 5 to 6 weeks to make these dogs think everything we want them to think is normal. That includes firemen with hats on, sirens going, open back stairs like fire escapes, because if there is an emergency, they can't be frightened of the people who are coming to help. Next slide, please. And again. So here's where COPE is different. Our first year of the dog's training life, they go to school. They go to something called Canines in the Classroom. And we are in 3 schools in Barrie high schools. And you can run through the slides of the students now. These are students who are at risk, mostly at risk of not graduating. And they are able to take a course, a credit course in high school that allows them to work with these dogs and to train them. And it starts them on the route of knowing their 90 commands. Stop here, please. And this is Damien. Damien has been such an advocate for COPE over the years and for Canines in the Classroom, which is what this program is called. And as you can see, well, maybe you can't, but anyway, Damien has bilateral cochlear implants due to a lack of hearing. He was being bullied. He had real difficulty wanting to come to school. And so Damien was paired with Buddy, and Buddy was one of our original dogs. And that dog changed his life. We actually have videos of kids who really have a marginalized look to them marching down the hallway, just proud as can be, with their dogs by their side. So again, our dogs touch just that many more people with this program. Next slide, please. Yeah, you can keep going. Please stop when you get to the child with book. Okay, we'll stop here. So it doesn't stop there. We've now got an at-risk teen paired with a dog, happy to come to school, and they're taught that the only way they can teach dogs is if they are happy, happier, or happiest. The dogs will not respond to anything aside from that. And so the kids are now starting to regulate their own moods and abilities. And once they are comfortable, they will go as a team to the younger kids in public schools, and they become reading buddies. So I don't know if you knew this, but children who are reticent to read to a human will read happily to a dog, because there is no judgment, no knowledge, no nothing. Next slide, please. And so we have children who are at risk of illiteracy, and you can see the paw placement is on purpose, it's on command, and the dogs are taught to look interested in a book. Well, believe it or not. Next slide, please. Next one. And we'll stop here. And what I love to point out here is, for those of you who are parents and may know about milestones, this child is quite behind in his ability to read. But look at the ecstatic look on his face when he is reading a kindergarten level book to a dog. Next slide, please. We also do therapy dogs who go into old age homes, long-term care residents. And so there is just not really an area that cope dogs don't touch. Next slide, please. And this is one of our life partners. This is Joe, who's a double amputee. He's here in Barrie. If you're out and about, you'll see him and his dog in No Frills or wherever. Joe has a very interesting story in that he has an elevator in his house. So now we have to have a dog that is confident with an elevator. And his first dog from Cope was, he could fit. But the next dog was a little bit bigger. So the current dog is taught when those elevator doors close, Joe gives the command, the dog runs up to the second floor and is at the elevator doors waiting for Joe to come back out again. Next slide, please. And this is Shelby with Big Mac. Next slide. And this is James with his first dog. James is now a teenager. And the very first night that he had a Cope dog, he has neuromuscular difficulties, so he is not able to lift himself up out of any space. And he had inadvertently flipped onto his tummy and face in the pillow, and the dog alerted the mom. And that was their very first night in the house. So the difference that these dogs make to not only the person who needs them, but the family around is phenomenal. Next slide, please. And this is, which one do you think is called Moose? The one that looks like Moose. Yeah, so this is Moose and Beacon, and they are two of our facility dogs. So we train either for people who need them to change their lives with independence, or we train for facility dogs. And these dogs have gone through all of the 90 commands, the reading buddies, the everything, and they are placed with the children's advocacy centers here in Barrie and also Aurelia. And I'm hopeful you don't know what the children's advocacy centers do, because what they do is they create space for first responders and children and lawyers and social workers to come to hear a child's story of unimaginable things that have gone on. And so the Children's Advocacy Center has told us that they would often have children who would not get in a car. They can't cope with them. But they take Moose out and they're like, oh my gosh, you're a dog. And Moose has been taught with pressure points to decrease anxiety, to be on the child's lap. And so the child is able to give the story that is needed. And what we didn't realize was after the child has left, how much the first responders needed Moose as well. So he's released and able to cuddle in with them. Next slide, please. So this brings us to how you, as a lovely group can support COPE. One of the ways is to be a volunteer. And one of the things that we need most of are volunteer drivers to drive our dogs to school, to literally pick them up. It's like that. I don't know if you've seen that YouTube where the bus drives up and the dogs come up, but it's very similar to that. And so that is one of the opportunities. Next slide, please. We have a national and world fiddle day coming up as well, and that is just a little ways away on May the 20th. Next slide, please. But this is the one that I think you might be able to get, no pun intended, your teeth into. It is our largest fundraiser that we do. It's called Buddy Up for COPE, from Buddy, the original dog that started the whole program. It's on June the 11th, and what you do in the smaller print there is you actually go on our website, you choose a COPE dog that is going to be the one that you are going to raise funds for, and then you personalize your fundraising page, which our staff is happy to do for you. If you were to go on, choose a dog and say, yes, I want a fundraising page, Tammy will make one up for you, and then it can be mailed out to all of your email contacts that you think would be interested. And then on June the 11th, we're hoping to have as many people as possible, with or without dogs, with or without costumes, to show up at Sunnydale Park and to just have a very fun walk in the park. Next slide, please. Next one. Here we are. So COPE is a phenomenal program. And with canines in the classroom happening in 3 of Barrie schools, high schools, and in a multitude of the junior schools as well, you are touching, if you support COPE, a phenomenal number of people. Now, at this point, I think Dave wanted the video to run. Dave?
Yes, did I send it to you, Joby?
I think it's the only presentation that you sent, Dave, is the one.
We can run that another time.
Yeah.
But I wanted to entertain any questions that any of you might have. Yes.
Wonderful organization. Thank you for sharing. I totally love the idea about the supporting the dog at the page or whatever. But I have a question. You said that's a retired service dog?
This one?
Yeah.
No,
Oh.
she's just coming, she's just over 2 years old.
Oh, okay.
So she is actually in what's called refinement training.
Oh, so that's why.
Which is the final leg.
So my question is, if a retired service dog, because I have a lab and they're so loving and
I
you can't
know.
touch them or anything. So when they're retired, like, are they like?
So the way that goes, Joe, that you saw, the double amputee, the life partner gets to choose, do they want to keep the retired dog? And we have to think about, can it cope with the new dog coming in and taking the space? Because some dogs are good with that and some dogs don't. So the majority of retired dogs stay with the life partner and just become dog.
Right.
Yeah, on couch dog.
Right, okay, yeah, I was always wondering how that, like, do they know they can go on the couch at that
Oh,
point?
in fact, if I took this coat off, and released her, I did this at our dentist recently, and you know, people get concerned about dogs that are working, like, oh, do they ever get time off? Do they ever get to be a real dog? And so the dentist's office, who I've been to forever, was asking that, and I said, do you want to see what the dog is really like? So because this was a little puppy, and he played just through cleaning and up on me, you know, just totally fine. Anyway, they're like, yeah, we can see. So I took it off. I couldn't even catch the dog.
Okay. Amazing, thank you.
Yeah, so it's really cool.
It's awesome.
And the other story that I have is a young gal who dove into a pool at a practice at 16 years of age and hit the bottom and came up as a high functioning quadriplegic and went through all kinds of physio and rehab and all that kind of thing. But she had to book, when she was able to live on her own, she had to book her bedtimes weeks in advance, like Tuesday come at 7, Wednesday come at whenever. If she dropped something, it was like you had to call for help. And so she went to a conference and saw service dogs and realized that this was the last link in the chain. So now, instead of doing all those things, she decides when bedtime is. The dog on command braces itself. She can transfer over to her bed. He will bump on command her legs up onto the bed. First of all, he pulled down the covers. I forgot that part. Then he pulls the covers off on command, goes over, hits the lights, gets on the bed, and the day is done. So if you can just imagine the delight of someone who has suffered through something like that, now having, it's like, I'm gonna say, a eureka moment. Yeah. So,
Can we speak to the other end? We talked about retirement there. Barb asked that question. What's the wait time wages for people that need dogs? Is there?
it is high, unfortunately, and it's because we have so many steps in order and need finances to be able to train each dog. So what COPE does is we ask for people to apply for a dog, and then if we feel we have some dog that will match with your needs, then that tends to move things up. So it's on a case-by-case basis. And COVID was actually a blessing in disguise, believe it or not, because we had to go virtual with all the training. And that meant that a family that lives down in the beach area of Toronto could apply for their son, who is a 16-year-old guy who is in a wheelchair, completely nonverbal, so the dad does all of the working. And they were able to do online Zoom training with our head trainer. And when I met the dad, yes, he's freaked about your one of the beavers that goes here. But this is free. Like, isn't it? So when I met the dad and I said, how has this changed your life? And he said, you would not believe it. In 16 years, our family has not slept because our son would fall out of bed every night. And so we were all on tenterhooks all the time. The dog is trained to be on the bed and to keep the son in the bed. And I never thought of the ripple effect to a family of how cool it is to finally have that. So you want to see a real dog?
Yeah.
Everybody's okay with the dog?
Yeah.
Oh, no, she won't go that far. She wants to be So a good reminder is when you see a dog that is in a boat like this, it needs to be hands off. Please. Yes. You know,
She wants to see you.
I know she does. Yeah, I know. I got the back. And then watch this. Yeah. Dress. Yes. So they lost their clothing. They know they're going to go someplace. They know they're going to do something, and demeanor just changes on a dime, which is fantastic.
How much longer before she graduated or she's going to graduate this fall?
Yeah. So she is almost fully clothed.
Wow.
Yeah.
Was it like almost 3 years old?
Almost. Yeah. And then I was retired at probably around 10. We tend to get that length of time just because we're so cautious of the data. Yeah. So www.copedogs.org, and you can choose a dog we are more than happy to set up a fundraising page for you, and we're working towards June 11th. So if you can help us out, that would be.
I've got email addresses. I'm gonna send it out to
Dave's gonna have a page. That's great. Well, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for, oh, she's gone. But thank you for doing that. All right. We're gonna come out a better day. Yeah, that's right.